Have you heard of geltangling? Probably not, because I just coined the term for one of my favorite techniques. It's the art of combining gel press and Zentangle, and we're going to do that today. Hey guys, it's Amber Rain Davis from NotableInk.com. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so I have my 5x7 gel press here, and I have it adhered to a 6x8 acrylic block. This is something new that I just got, and it's so handy. I will have all of the supplies and the source for this listed in the description down below. So be sure to check that out and give me a like and subscribe while you're down there. I'm going to start off with some Amsterdam burnt sienna. All of the paints that I use today are acrylic paints, and they're all from Amsterdam. I have a 2-inch soft rubber brayer here, and I'm just going to kind of scumble the paint around on the surface. I don't want to completely cover the surface, and you can see that I didn't clean my gel press before I started. I leave any extra paint that's left over on the gel press because it's going to add to the texture and the interest of the next print. So I don't ever clean my gel press. I just leave those bits on there. Here, I felt like there was a little too much burnt sienna, so I'm working in roll speed here. Rather, I'm showing this in roll speed so that you have an idea of the dry time and just how long it takes me to do this. Here I have a little silicone tool here. 3 of these come in a pack. Again, I'll list these down below. And they have different patterns on them. So you can kind of scrape it across the surface and it's going to lift up the paint and add some texture. Now my paint is really thin and pretty dry already. So you can see it didn't add much of a texture, but I'm going to show you how you can use this better when the paint is wetter in the next print. Here I have turquoise blue. And I'm just gonna kind of put that on roughly. I don't want just a completely smooth texture. I like to have a lot of texture in the paint, so I don't always blend it out smoothly. Over on the side, I have a piece of deli paper that I'm cleaning my brayer off on. You want to make sure that you clean your brayer in between paint colors if you don't want those colors to mix. I have some small bubble wrap here, and I'm just using that to lift some of the turquoise paint off. And the nice thing about the acrylic block is that you can flip it over and take a peek on the back side. This is what the print is going to look like once you get it down on your paper. So that's another nice thing about using the acrylic block. I've added some titanium white, and here I have looks like probably a 5 or 6 inch brayer. And I'm just going to use that to spread the white paint over the top. Now, for your last layer of paint, you want to work pretty quickly. Again, I'm going to clean that off on the deli paper. I'm going to bring over my watercolor journal. This is an ETCHR watercolor journal, and it's an A5 size. I'm going to go ahead and press this down. This was the journal that you guys highly recommended, and so far I'm loving it, so I appreciate the recommendation for it, and I'll have it linked down below. But so since I have this acrylic block on the back, I can't just close the journal on top of the gel press because the block is too large for me to close it. The binding won't allow it to close. If I positioned the gel press at one end of the block instead of centering it onto the block, I probably could manage closing it, so I might try that next time. I'm going to slowly peel back the paper so that I get as much of that paint transferring as possible. And I love the distressed edges that you get when you pull back your print. Now you can see there's some cobalt blue in there, so that's the paint that was left over on the gel press from the first 2 pages in this journal, and I'll link that in the right top hand corner in case you missed that. For the page on the left, I'm going to use the same colors. When I have a 2-page spread, I do like to kind of color coordinate those, so I usually end up using the same colors, but I'll do some different patterning. So here I'm using the burnt sienna, the turquoise blue, I'm using that little silicone tool, and I'm transferring some of the burnt sienna to the turquoise and vice versa, just to mix up the colors a little bit and have greater texture. And then I'm adding some Naples yellow here. And there's not a lot of yellow in this design because I have so much burnt sienna, so I'll add a little bit more later. So we're actually going to print this one twice. Here I'm just showing you the texture from the other side. Looks kind of boring to me, and so I feel like it needs a little more of a pattern on here. So I've grabbed a rubbing plate, and The pattern is the same on both sides, except for one side the pattern is a little thicker, and on the opposite side it's a little thinner because one side is embossed, the other side is debossed. So you just press this down on the gel press and it's going to lift the paint. Just like the bubble wrap lifted the paint, this is going to lift the paint as well. I don't normally flip this over like this, but I want you guys to see it, and I feel like you can see it a little bit better from the back than you can from the front. So there you can see how it's lifted, and then I'll go ahead and put white paint down to pull this print, but you don't have to use white for your last layer, you guys. Like carmine would be a really pretty color that would go with this color combination. Carmine is like a cool red, really pretty color, and that would look great with this. So with your last layer, again, you want to work quickly because you want your paint layer, your last layer of paint to be thin, almost so that you can see your first layers underneath it, but it needs to be wet when you pull your print. If you wait too long to add it to the paper, it's not going to pull all of the paint off. So if you're going for a really distressed look, you might want to let that last layer dry a little bit before you pull it so that it doesn't pull all of the paint off of the plate. The two things that you just need to practice with and kind of get a feel for is how much paint to use and how long to let it dry, or how quickly to pull your print. Those are the things that you'll just learn from trial and error, and it's going to be different for each paint. Some paints have a longer open time or a longer amount of time that they stay workable, whereas other paints have a shorter open time, meaning that they dry faster, and so you have to work faster. There's also extenders for your paint. So if you have a bunch of acrylic paints already from some other project and they're drying too quickly, you can purchase an extender for them that will keep them open longer and workable longer. Here I wanted to add a little bit of yellow, and so I just used the deli paper to pull off some of the paint because I didn't want just a rectangle on there. I wanted it to have some distressed edges. And here you're going to see how much I love these prints because I can't stop petting them. I love the texture of it. I just really feel like there is no other medium that can get you a look like this as easily as this. Gel press printing is just so awesome. I absolutely love it. So now we're going to move into one of my other favorite things to do, and that's to tangle. So we're going to use the Zentangle method of drawing with a Posca pin here. This Posca pen is an acrylic paint pen. There's plenty of other brands of acrylic paint pens. There's lots of different ones on the market. Posca pens are the only ones that I've tried, so I can't tell you how they compare, but they're amazing. I love them. Super opaque, and you just get beautiful line work with it. This is a 0.7 millimeter, which is their extra fine bullet nib point. And this seems to be the size that I prefer. They have much larger and thicker ones and thinner ones. This pattern that I'm doing, it doesn't have a name. I just kind of made it up, and it draws on that same S curve that I've used in a lot of my other drawings. And that's the nice thing about Zentangle is once you learn a particular stroke, you can just transform it into any other thing. I make leaves with this stroke. Dragonair, Cadent is another pattern that uses this. So many different patterns use this, but I decided to do it this way. I made similar flowers with this stroke, and that you can see in my digital stamp set. I'll link to that in the top right hand corner so you can check that out if you're interested. And I'm just going to add some details to this. So this first one I add more detail to because I'm just kind of playing around and seeing what I want to do. I definitely like the double line down the spine of each one of these little segments. I go on to add some white to the center of this and some other things, and ultimately I keep it to this design for the rest of them. So I'm starting off slow with this. Once the pattern starts to get really repetitive, because I'm going to fill the page with a lot of these, I will cut some of that footage out. And I will speed things up when it becomes repetitive so that you don't have to watch the same thing over and over. If I think that something is maybe interesting, or I'm drawing behind something, or the situation is a little bit different, then I might add that in. If at any time you feel like this video is too fast or too slow, just change the speed of the video in the YouTube settings. You guys can speed it up, you can slow it down. It's totally up to you. Feel free to change the speed of it in the settings. So here you can see I've done 3 of those, and I decided it would be fun to use a white Posca pen and add some in white as well. So I'm going to show you that. I think what's fun about this pattern is to vary the length of where these dots are. So I kind of start with a circle in the middle, and then you can put as many dots around it as you like. You can do an odd number, even number. What I would recommend, though, that adds a little more character to it is make some of them further away than the center dot and some really close. And that's just going to add kind of a fun and funky vibe to it. And then just go around and add your S shapes. The other thing that is great about the Posca pens or acrylic pens is, you know, I did my gel press printing with acrylic paint, and so your typical pens or your micron pens are not going to absorb into that. You can use, what I've recommended in the past is like an IdentoPen from Sakura or the Microperm pen, and those are great and those work really well. But I like the thicker nib of these acrylic pens, and I find that they glide over the surface of the gel press prints much better than the other pens. So I definitely am enjoying these acrylic pens a lot more than the IdentoPen and the Microperm. So I just wanted to add a little bit of more contrast to the center of these. So I'm thickening the bottom of the lines and I'm joining those together around in a circle, and I'm just going to add, it just adds this contrast to the center, which draws your eye to the center of this. I don't know, to me it almost looks like if an octopus was an umbrella, this is what I would imagine it would look like, you know what I mean? Or like the inside of like a cuttlefish or a squid or something. I don't know, that's what these remind me of. That's weird, I'm sure, but that's what they remind me of. They kind of remind me like they're flowing in water. It's some kind of undersea creature, I guess. Okay, so here I have the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2. These are wax crayons that are water soluble. They work great over top of the acrylic paint gel press, and of course on the water paper and with just a bunch of different mediums. Super awesome for your art journals and sketchbooks. So I've just put some down, and I'm using a wet watercolor brush just to blend that out. And I'll go ahead and speed this up so you can see it. But normally you guys know that I shade with a pencil, with all my Zentangles with a pencil. But yeah, that's not really going to work on this surface. And so I'm using a bright color because this piece was looking a little bit dark. So this is ultramarine that I'm using, and this bright color is just going to liven up this piece a little bit, and it's going to help bring these little underwater sea creatures forward and separate them from the background, because there's a lot going on in this background. And not only is it the background, but the sea creatures are made on top of the same pattern as well. There's literally no white space on this piece. So you have to kind of create this separation. Here I'm using a white Neocolor to highlight a little bit. That did not work as well, and so I will go in later with a white charcoal pencil over those areas instead, because I just don't think that the white was quite bright enough with the Neocolor. I am going to add a little bit of shadowing to add greater dimension to these so that they look like they're kind of sucked in even more. It just adds more movement to these little guys, and I won't do that to all of them. I only do it to a couple of them so that they all kind of look a little bit different. Here's the white charcoal pencil. This is from Zentangle, but you can get these from Generals. Generals creates these white charcoal pencils, and they're fantastic. You can either, you can leave it as is, just put it on and leave it as is, or you can blend it out with your finger or a paper stump. For the most part, I leave it as is. Sometimes I will blend it out just a little bit. And look at this, I'm back to petting it. I just can't help myself. I love the texture of it. A couple of my lines got a little soft and blended with the watercolor when I did that. They might not have been completely dry when I went in with the Neocolor 2 crayons. So I'm just going to tidy those up with the Posca pen. It helps to brighten them up and just reestablish those lines that got a little fuzzy. And yeah, I love it. I love the ultramarine. I think it helps to pop those forward. I also used the black Neocolor too, just to deepen up some of the shadows. Check out the dimension with this gel tangling. I'm totally smitten with it, but you let me know what you think of Geltangle in the comments. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do with notifications on so that you don't miss my next Geltangle video, which will be the page on the left, and I'll post that next week. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.